Hey everyone, welcome back to more stories about malicious compliance. In today's video, have you ever witnessed a boss so arrogant that they threatened to let go of their top employee? My new general manager called me useless and insisted I punch out at exactly 8 p.m. no matter what was happening on the floor. So naturally, I followed her instructions to the letter. Let's get into it. Our first story comes from our /malicious compliance and goes by the title Karen boss threatens worthless employee and gets humbled. So, I've been a server in upscale white tablecloth restaurant in my city for just over 8 years. In the hospitality world, 8 years at the same establishment is essentially a lifetime. It practically makes me a relic. I've outlasted 3 head chefs, countless line cooks, a global pandemic, and more gluten-intolerant customers who somehow still order the pasta than I could ever tally. The restaurant, let's refer to it as the establishment, is a true institution. We are not a chain. We are the kind of place you visit for your 50th anniversary dinner, a marriage proposal, or to seal a 6-figure business deal. A table for 2 easily runs $300 without anyone even trying. Because of that, the income is extraordinary. I live comfortably, own my home, and maintain a healthy savings account. All from carrying plates, as my aunt loves to point out. The reason I've stuck around this long isn't solely the money, though. It's the freedom. The owner, a genuinely great guy who actually began his career as a dishwasher back in the 80s, understands that at this caliber of dining, the servers function essentially as independent contractors running their own small businesses within a building. He allowed us to manage our own sections, handle our regulars, and offer complimentary items when necessary without needing a manager's authorization every 5 minutes. He understood that if I comped a dessert, it was because that guest had just spent $400 on wine and I was locking in their loyalty for the next decade. I know the menu cold. I know the wine cellar better than the sommelier, who is actually a terrific guy and trusts my palate completely. I have regulars who phone the restaurant just to confirm I'm working before they commit to a reservation. If I happen to be off that evening, they reschedule for another night. That's the kind of relationship I've built with them. About 4 months ago, the owner experienced some health issues. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully, but serious enough that his doctors advised him to step away from the daily grind. He chose to semi-retire and relocate to a warmer climate for the winter. To fill the void, he brought in a general manager. Enter Karen. I dislike using that name, but suits her energy so perfectly that I simply have no alternative. Karen had no background in fine dining whatsoever. She came from the world of corporate casual restaurants. Think locations covered in novelty items on the walls and microwaves tucked into the kitchen. Her world was built on spreadsheets, labor cost algorithms, and flipping tables in under 45 minutes. From her very first day, the culture clash was brutal. She didn't view the staff as assets. She saw us as thieves. In her mind, if we weren't visibly rushing around and sweating, we weren't doing our jobs. She resented the fact that the senior servers, myself and 2 others, had genuine rapport with the guests. She'd watch us spend 3 minutes chatting at a table and see time theft rather than relationship building. She began rolling out policies that made absolutely no sense for our clientele. No leaning, for instance. We're on our feet for 8 hours straight. Sometimes you rest against the server station for 30 seconds while waiting on a drink order. Also, upsell every item. Strict uniform inspections. She once wrote me up because my socks were a shade too dark compared to my trousers. I wish I were exaggerating, but her biggest issue was with me personally. I believe she felt threatened by me. I mean, I knew the staff better than she did. I knew the computer system better than she did. And honestly, on a packed Friday night, I was pulling in more in tips than she earned in salary for the entire week. That dynamic drove her absolutely mad. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are typically slower, but we had a VIP regular come in. Let's call him Mr. Tech. Mr. Tech had sold his company for millions a few years prior. He dines with us twice a month, always sits in my section, and always tips 30%. He's a dream guest. That evening, he was hosting a business dinner with 3 colleagues, and they were browsing our wine list, which includes some serious bottles in the $1,000 plus range. Karen, who had been lurking near the host stand like a vulture, caught my eye and aggressively tapped her wrist, mouthing "push the cap." She wanted me to pitch the Reserve Cabernet, a $650 bottle we'd overstocked. I walked over to the table. Mr. Tech asked for my recommendation and mentioned they were having the duck that evening. Anyone with wine knowledge understands you don't pair a big, tannic, oak-forward Cabernet with duck. It steamrolls the dish. So I suggested a beautiful Oregon Pinot Noir instead. Structured, earthy, and a perfect complement to the food. It also happened to be $120 a bottle. They ordered 3 bottles throughout the night. They were thrilled. The bill was substantial. The tip was generous. They left happy. The moment they walked out the door, Karen pulled me into the back office. She was seething. Her face had turned a shade of red that typically suggests a serious allergic reaction. "I told you to push the Reserve Cab," she hissed. "They ordered the duck," I replied, staying calm. The cab would have wrecked the palate. The Pinot was the right recommendation. They had 3 bottles. "I don't care about their palate," she snapped. "I care about the check average. That Pinot is garbage. You cost this restaurant $1,500 in sales tonight because you think you know better than me." "I do know better than you when it comes to wine pairings," I said, which in hindsight was a tactical error. And for the record, Mr. Tech trusts me. If I sell him a $600 bottle that clashes with his meal, he stops trusting me and we lose a regular. She slammed her hand on the desk. "You're arrogant, insubordinate, and frankly worthless to this management team. You're a server. You deliver plates. You're not a partner. You're not a sommelier. You are a pair of hands, and you're eating into my labor budget." And then came the pivot. She pulled up my time clock records. "I've been reviewing your hours," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You consistently clock out 15 to 30 minutes after your scheduled end time. You're milking the clock while you sit around counting your tips. I'm cleaning my section and completing my side work," I explained. "And sometimes tables linger. I can't leave while my guests are still seated." "Not anymore," she declared, a crooked smile spreading across her face. She thought she had me cornered. New policy, effective immediately. "No unauthorized overtime. If the schedule says you're off at 9 p.m., you clock out at 9 p.m. Not 9:01, not 9:05 to 9 p.m. I don't care if you're mid-table. I don't care if you're polishing a glass. You are off the floor and off the clock. If you go into overtime or remain past your scheduled end time without my express written permission, signed in triplicate, I will write you up. 3 write-ups and you're terminated for cause." Histoire de hair. "Karen, that's not realistic. If I have a table seated at 8:30, they won't be finished by 9 o'clock. Who picks up that table?" "The closing server will," she said dismissively. "Or I will. It's called labor management, something you clearly know nothing about. If you're scheduled until 9 o'clock, you leave at 9 o'clock. Do you understand that? Or is it too complicated for a worthless server?" The word worthless echoed in my head. I took a measured breath. "Can I get that in writing?" I asked, just so I'm clear on the expectations. "Gladly," she sneered. 10 minutes later, an email landed in the entire staff's inbox. Subject line, strict scheduling policy. Written in bold red font, it stated that all staff must clock out precisely at their scheduled time. It made clear that remaining past your shift to finish serving a table was strictly forbidden and would be treated as time theft and insubordination. It specified that any remaining service duties would be transferred to the manager on duty or the closing server. I printed a copy. I photographed it on my phone. I forwarded it to my personal email. Then I checked the schedule. For the following 2 weeks, she had placed me on a mid-shift on Fridays and Saturdays. I typically close those nights because I'm the strongest server, but despite me, she'd schedule me from 4 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on a Friday in a restaurant that stays open until 11 p.m. game on. The first few days were awkward, but manageable. It was midweek. As I approached my scheduled end time, usually around 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, I'd have 1 table wrapping up dessert. I would walk up to Karen and say, "It's 8:58. I need to clock out per your policy." She'd roll her eyes, grab the check presenter from me, and say, "Go. I've got it." It was clearly unsettling for the guests, who looked confused as I rushed through my goodbyes. But since it was slow, Karen could run a credit card without the whole operation collapsing. She smirked at me every time I clocked out, convinced she was winning, convinced she was saving money because I was leaving exactly when scheduled. She believed she was finally in control. The other servers were quietly panicking. "What do we do if we're in the weeds?" they asked me. "Follow the policy," I told them. "Do exactly what she said. Don't give her ammunition to fire you." By Friday, the tension was already suffocating. Friday evenings at the establishment are a controlled war zone. The kitchen runs hot. The bar is 3 deep. You need rhythm, flow, and your best people exactly where they need to be. Karen had scheduled me, the lead server, to leave at 8 p.m. on Friday, right in the heart of peak service. It was a baffling decision, clearly made to disrupt my income or to set me up for termination if I refused to comply, because the serious money flows between 8 o'clock and 10 p.m. Friday came. The reservation book was completely full. We had a private party of 20 in the back room, and every table in the main dining room had already turned twice. I arrived at 4 p.m., set up my section, took my first rounds of tables, and was moving at full speed. Even with the shortened shift, the money was shaping up nicely. By 7 p.m., the storm had arrived. The host stand was overwhelmed. The kitchen was already running 25-minute ticket times, long by our standards. Karen was circling the floor with a clipboard, trying to project authority while visibly unraveling. She was barking at the bussers to move faster, which only caused them to fumble and drop things. At 7:45 p.m., a party of 6 walked in. It was the mayor and his family. Not metaphorically, the actual mayor of the city. He's a regular, a genuinely pleasant man. Loves the ribeye. The host sat them in my section because everyone on staff knows I'm the one who handles VIPs best. I greeted them warmly, took their drink orders, recited the evening's specials. They were in a celebratory mood. His daughter had just passed the bar exam. They were going to order big. Appetizers, seafood towers, the works. I entered their order, ran their drinks, and was at my best. Then I glanced at my watch. 7:55 p.m. My shift ended at 8 p.m. I scanned the room for Karen. She was at the expo line, screaming at the sous chef over garnish placement. I walked to the POS terminal and printed the current check for the mayor's table. Just drinks so far, but the food was already firing. 7:58 p.m. I approached the table. "Mr. Mayor, congratulations again to your daughter," I said with my warmest, most professional smile. I didn't need to apologize, but my shift ends in exactly 2 minutes. He looked puzzled. "Oh, you're leaving? We haven't even received our appetizers yet." "I know, and I'm genuinely sorry," I said, making sure my voice carried to the neighboring tables. "But our new general manager, Karen, has put a strict zero-tolerance policy in place regarding overtime. I am required, under threat of termination, to clock out at 8 p.m. sharp. I cannot stay a moment longer." The mayor frowned. "That sounds rather rigid." "It is," I agreed, "but I have to follow orders. Someone will take over your table shortly. It's been a true pleasure." I stepped away before he could respond. 7:59 p.m. I headed to the back office. Karen was there grabbing a menu. "Karen," I said, "it's 7:59. I'm clocking out." She looked up at me, a bead of sweat forming above her lip, then glanced at the dining room monitor, a sea of red indicating tables in need of attention. "What?" "No, you cannot leave right now. Look at the floor," she snapped. "The schedule says 4 to 8 p.m., I replied, holding up my phone displaying the schedule. "And your email says no unauthorized overtime. No exceptions. Clock out at your scheduled time. If I stay, I'm insubordinate. You call me worthless, remember? Surely the restaurant can manage without me tonight." "I didn't mean." "We are absolutely slammed," she shrieked. "The email didn't say unless it's busy," I replied, my voice steady and cold. "It said no exceptions. I'm not getting written up. Goodbye, Karen." I entered my code into the time clock. Clock out successful. 8 p.m. I turned and walked into the locker room. As I changed into my regular clothes, I could already hear the chaos escalating. But it wasn't just me. Remember how I mentioned the other servers were quietly panicking? 2 of the other veteran servers had shifts ending at 8:30 p.m. They had watched what I did. They had read the email. I walked out the back door, got into my car, and drove home. But I didn't just sit there. I had a friend working the bar that night, Let's call him Michael, and Michael was closing. I texted him, updates. According to Michael, the moment I left, everything fell apart. The mayor's table sat for 20 minutes without a server. Their appetizers came up in the window, waited under the heat lamps, and went cold, rubbery by the time a food runner finally delivered them. The mayor asked for water. Nobody came. Karen attempted to take over my section, but didn't know the menu. She didn't know the table numbers. She had no idea that table 42 had a shellfish allergy. She sent a crab cake to table 42. The guests thought to ask before eating it, but they were outraged. Then 8:30 p.m. arrived. The two other senior servers, following my lead, clocked out. They set down their trays and walked off the floor. We've got to go, Karen's rules. They handed off their tables, and suddenly the restaurant was down 3 lead servers in the middle of a packed Friday night rush. The remaining staff were newcomers, college kids with 3 months of experience, and they were drowning. Karen was running around in a complete panic. She was actually in tears at one point. She dropped a tray of martinis near the front entrance. The mayor walked out. He didn't pay for the drinks. He simply stood up, told the host, "This is unacceptable," and left. By 9:30 p.m., the kitchen had ground to a halt. Tickets were lost. Guests were waiting an hour for entrees. And the reviews started hitting Google and Yelp in real time. Service has completely fallen apart. Our server abandoned us mid-meal. The manager was screaming at staff in the dining room. Used to be our favorite place, never returning. According to Michael, the kitchen staff eventually stopped cooking because they had no idea where to send the food. The expediter walked out. It was a total, unmitigated catastrophe. I enjoyed my weekend. I switched my phone off. I sat on my porch with a lovely glass of wine. Monday morning, I turned it back on. 7 missed calls from the restaurant. 3 voicemails from Karen, ranging from pleading to threatening. And 1 voicemail from the owner. "Opie, it's me. I'm back in town. I need you to come in at 10 a.m. We need to talk." I put on my best suit. I printed the email Karen had sent. I printed the schedule. I printed the notes I had written down immediately after the worthless conversation. Always document everything, folks. And I walked into the restaurant. The owner was seated at table 1, the power table. He looked exhausted. He looked furious. Karen sat across from him. She looked as though she hadn't slept in 3 days. Her eyes were swollen. "Sit down," the owner said. "Karen tells me you walked out on your shift Friday night," he began. "She says you abandoned the mayor's table and caused a walkout." I glanced at Karen. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't walk out, sir," I said evenly. "I clocked out." I slid the email across the table to him. Karen put a new policy in place last week. 0 tolerance for overtime. Mandatory clock out at the scheduled time. She told me directly that I was worthless, and that if I stayed even 1 minute past my scheduled end time, I would be written up and eventually terminated. She scheduled me to leave at 8 p.m. on Friday. I followed her instructions exactly. The owner read the email. He read the bold red text. He reviewed the schedule I'd brought. Then he looked at Karen. The silence in the room was dense enough to crush stone. "You scheduled your lead server to leave at 8 p.m. on a Friday?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet, and threatened to fire him if he stayed to look after the guests. "I was trying to manage labor costs," Karen squeaked. "Corporate standards say we are not corporate," the owner cut her off. He slammed his hand on the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. "We are a hospitality business. The mayor, my personal friend, called me Saturday morning to tell me that my manager nearly served a shellfish dish to an allergic guest and that the overall experience was worse than a fast food drive-thru." He turned back to me. "Is it true? Did she call you worthless?" "Yes, sir," I said. "She said I was just a pair of hands." The owner took a slow breath. He rose from his chair. "Karen, give me your keys." "But your keys." "Now, you're finished. Collect your things and leave my restaurant." Karen began trying to justify herself. Margins, labor percentages, corporate benchmarks. The owner simply pointed to the door. She set her keys on the table and made the walk of shame past the kitchen, where the entire staff was watching through the service window, grinning from ear to ear. Once she was gone, the owner sat back down and rubbed his temples. "I'm sorry, OP," he said. "I should have vetted her more carefully before bringing her on." I looked at the resume and assumed she could tighten things up while I was away. I didn't expect her to burn everything down. It happens, I said. The damage is significant, he admitted. We have a lot of apologies to make. I need your help putting this back together. I can't be here every night. My health won't allow it. But I also can't bring in another stranger off the street. He looked at me directly. I want you to take the floor manager position. You know the staff, you know the guests, you know the wine. I make more money as a server, I reminded him. And it's true. It's the classic industry trap. Managers earn a salary. Sheriffers earn tips. A promotion typically means a pay cut. I know, he said. I'll match your earnings from last year as a base salary, plus a percentage of wine sales, and you set your own schedule. I ran the numbers in my head. It was a remarkable offer. Stability, authority, and no more side work rolling silverware at the end of the night. Deal, I said. That was 2 months ago now. We smoothed things over with the mayor. A complimentary dinner and a very expensive bottle of vintage port worked wonders. The reviews have recovered, and the staff is in high spirits because I threw out every one of Karen's absurd policies. We lean whenever we want. We wear whatever socks we like, and we put the guest ahead of the clock every single time. Now let's move on to the next story. It begins like this. I'm well aware that the name Karen is typically associated with entitled women, but my brother fit the role so perfectly that I honestly couldn't think of a better alternative. I'm so fed up with him at this point that my creativity just ran dry. My brother has always been the type to whine and groan that things are unfair, but only when I have something he doesn't. When he receives something I don't have. Fairness conveniently disappears from the conversation altogether. I understand that when raising 2 children, a sense of equity makes sense. You don't want either kid feeling less loved or like the other is getting preferential treatment. If you don't believe me, try handing 2 children of similar age 2 pieces of cake, but make one of them twice as large. You'll see the reaction immediately. So, my mom naturally did her best to keep things balanced between us, making sure neither of us received special treatment. That never stopped my brother from wanting more and conjuring up ridiculous justifications for why it was justified. His go-to excuse was that he deserved more because he was a year and a half older, something he treated as though it were a massive generational gap. We received the same allowance, and he complained endlessly that it wasn't fair because his seniority entitled him more, despite us doing the exact same chores, which is how my mom eventually talked him down from that particular meltdown. He also operated under the belief that anything I owned was automatically available for his use. So when my birthday came around and I received gifts from friends and family, he complained about feeling left out, and my parents would usually end up getting him a small something. To be fair, they did the same for me on his birthday, so it wasn't as though they were showing favoritism. But even when I received something on his birthday, he had complaints. His new argument, by giving me a present, his birthday was being ruined, and he couldn't have anything special because of me. So yeah, growing up with him was exhausting because no matter what, he would find something to complain about. Over time, my parents started giving in to him. Whether they were worn down or had some other reasoning, I'm not sure. But I learned that even when I told him he couldn't borrow my things, my mom would override me and tell me I had to share because he was my brother. It wasn't that I was stingy, I just hated the double standard. His belongings were completely off limits to me, and whenever he did use my things, they came back in terrible condition or didn't come back at all. The number of CDs he borrowed and destroyed was honestly uncountable. The first real flashpoint happened when I was around 14, which might give you a sense of the era. I had spent over a year saving every cent of my allowance, birthday money, and holiday money from relatives because I had my eye on something big, the PlayStation 2. At the time, it was the hottest new thing and far from cheap. And by the way, ripe stars, if you bought a PlayStation 2 back then, do you remember what you paid? In euros or converted to euros, it was somewhere around 500 euros to 600 euros, which was an absolutely staggering amount at the time. Sure, it's modest compared to what current gen consoles run now, but for a teenager, it was enormous. I bought it, and immediately my brother began complaining that it wasn't fair that I had one and wasn't sharing it freely. Despite having saved and purchased it entirely on my own, I was pressured into letting him use it too. Naturally, He broke my controller within a week. As an adult, he only got worse, not better. Even now, he finds reasons to cry foul. One year, I went on a trip with friends, and my mom called to ask me to take down the photos I was posting on social media. Not because anything was inappropriate, but because my brother had told her I was only posting them to rub it in his face that he couldn't afford to travel. Then came the real escalation. I decided to give myself a genuinely extravagant birthday present, a Lamborghini. I had worked hard and saved diligently, and every moment behind that wheel was something I savored. It wasn't just a birthday treat. I'd also recently received a promotion at work, so the timing felt right. You'd think my own family would be happy for me. They weren't. I met them for my birthday dinner, pulled up in the new car, and they all saw it. My parents seemed pleased initially, but my brother looked furious from the moment he laid eyes on it, and for no discernible reason. It was supposed to be a day to celebrate me, yet he gave me almost no acknowledgement, and the mood at the table was unmistakably tense. When I brought up the promotion, he actually scoffed and accused me of bragging to make others feel inferior. Nothing was said at the table directly, but I later found out he spoke to my parents after I left. The next day, both of them called me together and asked me to apologize to my brother. I told them I'd done absolutely nothing wrong. They insisted that the car and the promotion had upset him, and that he didn't think it was fair I had a nice vehicle when he didn't have one. I told them fairness had nothing to do with it. I had worked extremely hard for that car. The conversation got heated, and we ended the call. My brother also phoned me separately to tell me off for being insensitive and showing up just to flaunt the car in his face. He informed me that, as the older brother, he felt I should wait for him to acquire something before I could go and get it. Never mind that he would never actually save his money for a significant purchase. Like when we were teenagers, he still spends money the moment he gets it, without any thought toward building toward something. No concept of delayed gratification whatsoever. The next call came with all three of them together, and they were angry that I hadn't answered the first time, which was because I was at work and keep my phone off so I'm not interrupted. Dad, you need to make this right with your brother. Family matters more than your pride. Me, I haven't done anything wrong. All I did was buy myself a birthday present. Mom, you showed up and made him feel inadequate. Brother, yeah, I've got genuine emotional damage from what you did. Acting like you're superior when I'm supposed to be the older one. Me, you really want me to apologize for being successful when I honestly believe my own family would be proud of me? Brother, I want a car. I'm older. It's only fair that I should have it. Me, you can't even drive that car. Mom, not to drive it, as a gift. His half birthday is coming up, so if it could count as a present. Me, absolutely not. This was a gift I gave myself, and I am not handing over an expensive car to him. You want to talk about fairness? Then explain to me how that's fair to me. Brother, you don't deserve it after all the bragging. Dad, can't you just save up and get another one? Or look at something more modest? You don't need anything that fancy. Me, you want to know something? I wasn't bragging before, but I absolutely am now. I have a better career than any of you probably will, and the discipline to save up for something exceptional. At this point, I wouldn't even let you sit in my car. I've earned everything I have, and if you don't think that's fair, that's your problem, not mine. As you can probably imagine, that didn't improve my standing with the family. But it was a statement a long time coming, and getting it off my chest felt liberating. That didn't stop my brother, and especially my mom, from leaving some rather unfriendly voicemails. My brothers I dismissed without much thought, but my mom calling me selfish and saying I was a bad son genuinely stung. I couldn't take back what I said, and I didn't want to, because doing so would have meant surrendering to my brother all over again. I eventually started communicating with him again, only for the conversation to circle back to complaints that my brother didn't have a car and might lose his job if he couldn't get to work reliably. So I decided to teach him a lesson. I told him I was going to give him my car and would leave it outside our parents' house, a neutral midpoint between where we each lived. I did leave a car. It just wasn't the Lamborghini. Instead, it was my old beaten-up vehicle that I'd been driving before the upgrade. On the windshield, I left a note explaining that if he really wanted things to be fair, he could do exactly what I did, drive the less glamorous car and save up for something better. Of course, the angry calls followed. And honestly, Maybe that move was a little unkind, but I think it was worth it. If my family is willing to write me off as the villain simply because I won't hand over my new car to my brother, then perhaps those aren't the relationships I should be prioritizing. I deserve people like my friends, people who were genuinely thrilled about my promotion and my new car. Supportive people, not a family unit that seems to revolve entirely around my brother's entitled behavior. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I realize I forgot to include the slide where Opie asked whether he's the one in the wrong. So I'm curious what you all think. Did Opie behave like the bad guy here, or was everything he did completely justified? Let me know in the comments. Our next story is a lighthearted, malicious compliance tale. It's titled, I Was Very Compliant During Time Out as a Child. So when I was about 4 years old, I was in the middle of a full tantrum over something utterly trivial. Honestly, I can't even remember what it was. I didn't know I was wearing nice shoes and a party dress. So I was probably upset about having to leave a friend's birthday party. My mother sat me in timeout in an upholstered chair in the dining room. She told me I was not allowed to get up or make a single sound. I'm 20 now, and I have a visceral memory of stopping mid-cry just long enough to be frightened by how towering she looked as she leaned over the chair and raised her voice at me. Then she walked out of the room. That's when it hit me. I really needed to use the bathroom. I hadn't gone since before leaving the birthday party, but the rules were clear. No getting up, no making noise. I remember trying to hold it for as long as I possibly could, which, truthfully, wasn't very long, before accepting that I was apparently going to be in that chair forever, so I might as well let the inevitable happen. I was still crying from being scolded, and I distinctly remember thinking, that'll teach her not to tell me I can't move or make noise. My mother returned to find a completely soaked child in the task of cleaning an upholstered dining room chair ahead of her. She looked at me and asked, "It's only been 20 minutes. If you couldn't wait, why didn't you just get up and come find me?" And I looked right back at her and said, "You told me not to get up or say anything." And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow.